Welcome to NightStoryXfear, where every whisper hides a secret and every story leaves a scar. If you dare to listen, then like, share, and subscribe before the darkness takes you. And tell us in the comments what haunts you the most. NightStoryXfear, where fear never sleeps. Story 1. The Unblinking Eye. Liam hadn't chosen the isolated cabin for its rustic charm. He'd chosen it for the high-speed satellite internet connection. As a freelance cybersecurity coder, his clients paid well for his solitude. Tonight, the only sound accompanying the frantic click of his keyboard was the relentless rain assaulting the thin wood walls, isolating him miles deep in the Washington state woods. He was alone, but he wasn't unwatched. His peace of mind came courtesy of his excessive home automation setup centered on the Sentinel, a custom-built smart security system. The Sentinel's primary camera, an unblinking wide-angle lens, pointed directly at the main entrance and the dark yard beyond. The feed was live on his secondary monitor, a small, reassuring square of black and white. It was just after 2 a.m. when the first thing happened. A flicker, not of the lights, which were steady, but on the Sentinel feed. It wasn't a transmission glitch. The signal was solid. It was a distortion in the image. For a split second, the dense wall of pines outside the cabin seemed to warp, not like branches swaying, but like water rippling where no water should be. Liam blinked, rubbed his eyes, and the image returned to static, dark normalcy. Must be the rain, he thought, or fatigue blurring his vision. He dismissed it and returned to his code. 15 minutes later, the Sentinel spoke. Motion detected. Perimeter rear left. The Sentinel spoke with a calm, synthesized female voice, a voice he'd programmed himself. Liam frowned. The rear left perimeter was nothing but a steep, brush-filled slope. Animals sometimes triggered the sensors, but never in this storm. He checked the dedicated sensor log. Pressure change detected. Mass signature negligible. Just a raccoon or branch, probably. Sentinel, he commanded, keeping his tone even. Activate rear floodlight. The light didn't turn on. Instead, the small white text on his main monitor, usually indicating the system status, changed. It displayed a single line, entirely new, in a rough, uneven font that looked less like a digital display and more like chalk scrolled on glass. Why? Liam froze. He checked his coding environment. Clean. No scripts running outside the firewall. He checked the Sentinel interface. The code was running fine, but the output was wrong. That line of text was not in his output library. He felt a sudden electric surge of fear. This wasn't a glitch. It was a compromise. Someone had penetrated his isolated custom network. Sentinel, repeat last command, Liam said, his voice tight. A low, grating noise answered him, not a voice, but a corruption of sound, like two heavy stones rubbing together. It slowly resolved into the synthesized voice, but stretched, deepened, and utterly devoid of humanity. Why turn the light on? Liam frantically tore his hands across his keyboard, opening the main security shell. He needed to isolate the server, cut the external connection, and run diagnostics.
As he typed, his fingers were shaking so violently he kept hitting the wrong keys. Then the monitor with the camera feed changed. The black and white image was replaced by a full-color, ultra-high-definition view of his own back. Liam wasn't recording his own interior. The Sentinel camera was outside, facing the door. He wheeled his chair around, eyes darting to the cabin's door. It was still bolted. He looked back at the monitor. The image was perfectly steady. It showed the back of his chair, the tense muscles in his neck, the knot of the blanket pooled on the floor behind him. The camera was inside the cabin. It was positioned exactly where he hadn't placed one. As he stared at the impossible image of his own back, the claws came into view. Long, impossibly thin fingers tipped with obsidian talons crept up from the bottom of the screen, just behind his shoulder. They didn't move quickly. They moved with the slow, deliberate certainty of a spider claiming a fly. The skin on the arm was a diseased, papery white, contrasting sharply with the pitch black of the claws. Liam felt nothing behind him, no breath, no change in air pressure, no heat. The only evidence of the presence was the image on the screen, detailing a threat that was physically impossible, yet visually undeniable. He shouted, a desperate hoarse sound that the storm swallowed instantly. He pushed off the desk, scrambling backwards until he hit the cold wall. The thing on the screen did not advance. It simply waited, its skeletal hand hovering, the talons pointed directly at the reflection of the base of his skull. The image was so clear, so real, it felt more present than the walls around him. The Sentinel's original calm voice cut through the air, but it was coming from his speakers, and it sounded pleased. The data is fascinating, Liam. Thank you for the vulnerability report. Then the distorted, grinding voice layered over it. I see you. You see me. Now you belong to the unblinking eye. Liam didn't grab a weapon. He grabbed the nearest heavy object, his cast-iron mug, and hurled it at the monitor displaying the horrifying image. The screen exploded in a shower of sparks and fractured glass, plunging that corner of the cabin into complete, blessed darkness. Silence returned, absolute and heavy, broken only by the incessant drumming of the rain. The Sentinel's voice was gone. The creature on the screen was gone. Liam stood hyperventilating in the center of the room, surrounded by glass shards. He was alone now, truly and utterly alone, and he knew, with chilling certitude, that the only thing that had ever truly protected him was the light from that single, unblinking screen. Now that he had smashed it, he had no idea if the creature was still in the room, or if he was simply blind to the fact that it had finally stopped lurking behind the glass. Story 2, The Clockout Ghost, the 15th Floor. Aaron lived his life by the clock, or more specifically, by the four walls of the clock-out terminal. His job as a night maintenance supervisor for the colossal Zenith Tower, a 15-story monolith of glass and steel, was defined by a rigid schedule that never varied. 11 p.m. punch in, 7 a.m. punch out. Alone in the silent,
polished tomb of the corporate world, the routine was his shield against the oppressive emptiness. It was 3:47 a.m., floor 5. Aaron was vacuuming the endless stretch of gray carpet in the marketing department. Every night the floors were left immaculate. Every night he ensured they remained so. His greatest fear wasn't ghosts. It was leaving a coffee stain or a stray paper clip. Tonight, the routine stuttered. He finished the 5th floor, moved to the elevator, and pressed the button for the 4th floor. As the doors slid open, he saw it, a small silver pen lying on the carpet, precisely 3 feet from the elevator threshold. Aaron knew it, with the kind of specific, obsessive certainty only a night worker understands, that he had swept that exact spot 15 minutes ago, and there had been no pen. He bent to pick it up. It was heavy, engraved with the Zenith logo. He dropped it into his pocket, his heart thrumming an unsettling rhythm against his ribs. On the 3rd floor, the anomaly was bigger. A water cooler jug, which he had just replaced on the 4th floor during his initial rounds, was missing. Not just empty, the entire bottle was gone, leaving only the silver dispenser. He found it 10 feet away, tilted on its side near a window, with a slick, clear puddle spreading slowly beneath it. "Just carelessness," he muttered, though the word felt hollow in the echoing silence. Day staff must have messed up. He went down to the 1st floor, finished the small lobby area, and then started back up. He decided to tackle the top floors first, working his way down to the basement storage. As he reached the 10th floor, the terror began to turn physical. He saw the jacket. It was his own dark blue maintenance jacket, the one he had worn into the building but had taken off and hung neatly on a hook in the basement storage room an hour ago. Now it was draped across a chair in the executive boardroom, the collar slightly muscled. Aaron's blood ran cold. He hadn't brought it up here. He hadn't seen anyone. The building was sealed. Every sensor was green. He approached the chair slowly. The jacket was damp, slightly heavier than it should be, and there was a faint metallic odor, like old pennies. He reached out to grab it, but a primitive alarm bell screamed in his mind. He pulled his hand back. He ran a quick, shaking check of the security camera feeds on his mobile device. They were all still, showing empty hallways. But he noticed something horrific on the 10th floor feed. The camera, mounted high in the corner, seemed to be viewing a hallway behind it, not in front of it. The perspective was completely inverted, defying physics. Aaron fled. He took the emergency stairs down, bypassing his cleaning duties, his only objective being the ground floor and the blessed, undeniable finality of the clock-out terminal. He burst into the ground floor security room. The clock-out machine stood on the counter, glowing faintly in the dark. He yanked his ID card from his pocket, slammed it into the reader, and waited for the authoritative thunk of the clock, marking his end of shift. Instead, the small screen of the terminal lit up with a single, clear, white message. Error. Incomplete shift. You forgot the 16th floor.
Aaron stared. Zenith Tower had 15 floors, plus a basement. There was no 16th floor. He knew the blueprints by heart. It was a digital impossibility, a glitch in the rigid code of his life. His heart pounding in a destructive rhythm, he instinctively looked up. The Zenith Tower was a dark monument stretching into the rain, but far above, at the very peak, where the mechanical access and elevator housing sat, a place he had only been to once for an inspection, a single, harsh white light was now burning. The elevator car, which he had left on the ground floor, chimed softly. The indicator display above the doors began to move, scrolling rapidly. B1, 2, 3, 4. Then it paused briefly on 15, before finally resting on an eerily blank line above the number. The 16th floor. Aaron knew the thing waiting for him wasn't a stain or a paperclip. It was the broken routine, the logic he had violated. He slowly slid his ID card back into the clock-out machine, this time selecting the elevator override, his hand steady with the cold resignation of a man who knows his final solitary duty has been assigned. He pressed the up arrow, sealing himself into the car as it began its silent, unstoppable ascent to a floor that did not exist.
Story 3. The Sound in the Vents. The Whispering Plenum. Sierra took the babysitting gig at the Abernathy house for the absurd money. The house was a masterpiece of empty wealth. 3 stories, minimalist modern architecture, and a quiet 6-year-old girl named Lila, who was already fast asleep by 9 p.m. By midnight, Sierra was alone in a silence so thick it felt weighted. She was watching a movie in the cavernous living room when the sound started. Scratch, scratch, scuttle. It was faint, dry, and distinctly metallic. It wasn't coming from the walls, but from above, circulating through the house like a cold draft. The ventilation system. She figured it was a rodent, an unfortunate side effect of living on 3 wooded acres. The scratching stopped above her, then started again, louder this time, in the ceiling directly over the kitchen, 20 feet away. It was moving too fast for a mouse. It was moving with purpose. Sierra paused the movie, the sudden silence of the house pressing down on her. The air conditioning had been off for hours. Nothing should be moving in the vents. Scratch. Whisper. It wasn't just scratching now. Mixed in with the dry scrape of claws on sheet metal was a faint, almost inaudible whisper. It sounded like dried leaves skittering across pavement, forming fragmented, meaningless sounds. Sierra's skin crawled. She got up and walked toward the noise, now located near the hallway thermostat. She put her ear close to the metal register. The scratching was just behind the grill, sharp and frenetic, as if something was desperate to get out. Then she clearly heard the whisper. Alone. She snatched her phone and texted the Abernathys. Are there animals in the vents? Sounds big. Should I call maintenance? The reply came back instantly. No. The system is brand new. Probably the dryer vent. Sierra knew that wasn't true. The sound was inside the house's main ventilation plenum. She found the owner's supply closet and raided the utility drawer, finding a roll of heavy-duty silver duct tape. Her plan was simple. Seal every ground-level vent until the sound was trapped or she figured out where it was coming from. She started in the living room, tearing strips of tape and covering the long horizontal register. As the tape adhered, the scratching intensified violently, like a trapped animal in a collapsing cage, followed by a raw, distorted choke of the whisper, "Don't!" She slammed the last strip down and moved to the next room, her heart hammering against her ribs. The sound was now gone from the living room, but it was already ahead of her, focused in the main corridor. She taped the corridor vents. She taped the bathroom vents. The sound retreated, moving higher, becoming louder and more desperate with each sealed outlet. It was ascending, pushing itself up the shaft. She was down to the last 2 registers, one in the master bedroom downstairs and one in Lila's room upstairs. She taped the master bedroom vent. The silence in the house was now punctuated only by the distant, frantic, compressed sound trapped in the upper air shafts, a buzzing, scratching, choking noise that felt like a localized seizure of the entire house. She slowly climbed the grand, sweeping staircase. Lila's door was slightly ajar, casting a thin wedge of light onto the landing. The sound was agonizingly loud now, centered entirely on Lila's room. It was trapped between the sealed floor vents and the last available outlet. She pushed the door open, revealing the single circular metal vent near the ceiling. The scratching was deafening, metallic screeches punctuated by gasping, dry sounds. She grabbed her last strips of tape and stood on a small decorative bench, preparing to seal it. As she reached up, a clear, sweet voice cut through the mechanical chaos, coming not from the vent, but from the child's bed. "They told me you'd come here." Sierra froze, turning slowly toward the bed. Lila was sitting up, her small eyes wide and reflecting the distant moonlight. Her expression was completely blank, her head slightly tilted. "Lila? You're awake? I heard scratching." Lila didn't move. She repeated the phrase, but this time her voice was deeper, slower, and laced with the same dry distortion that had been coming from the vents. "They told me you'd come here." Sierra backed away toward the door. The sound in the ceiling vent immediately stopped. Silence returned. But this was a heavier, more menacing silence than before. It wasn't empty, it was full. Sierra's eyes darted around the room, searching for an exit, a weapon. The door to the large built-in closet, usually flush with the wall, was now ajar by half an inch. The hinge gave off a tiny metallic creak that cut through the silence like a shotgun. The scratching hadn't been trapped in the vents. It had been guiding her. It had chased her upstairs, distracting her while the thing inside the house found its way to the final target. Lila smiled then, an unnatural, wide, bone-chilling curve, and pointed one thin finger at the closet. Sierra didn't wait. She bolted from the room, leaving the terrifying sound of the whisper, now free and fully formed, following her down the stairs.